What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of MUT Tips. I'm your host, Sean Taylor from the MUT Theater. And before we get started, make sure to like the video down below, leave a comment, and as always, subscribe on YouTube to be informed of upcoming videos and live streams. Ring that bell. Now, let's jump into today's topic, answering your questions. We're gonna do a little viewer mail in today's episode because I get questions in YouTube comments as well as privately through my email, and I wanna answer some of them here today. Question number one comes from Victor, and his question is, I struggle with confidence on stage sometimes. Any tips for that? I talked about this pretty recently in episode 120 of MUT Tips entitled, You Have High Status in Improv, because ultimately a lack of confidence comes from the inability to get yourself in that high status persona, being on stage in a high status authoritative position, whether you're a host or even as a performer, and just knowing that the audience is here for you. They are here to watch you, and dismissing the judgment that you think they might have towards your performance. A quick little trick to maybe building a little bit more confidence is through your body, and that's by opening your body. A lot of the confidence issues sometimes stem from the body, And with characters, I always say, you can start outside with physicality and let it work inwards. And I think that happens with confidence. If we have our hands in our pockets or, our arms crossed, like these little barriers we have between ourselves and the audience and our scene partners, I think that can create a lack of confidence. So sometimes when I'm off to the side and I feel like a little bit nervous, I a lot of times like to just kind of do this. Put my hands on my hip and kind of puff out my chest, and my pelvis is out even a little bit too. And it kind of does help me get into that high status mentality by just opening up my body. Good way to practice is just do a scene with 2 or 3 or 4 other people. I like to do group scenes with this. And the whole scene, everybody has to have their hands on their hip and their pelvis just slightly out, chest just puffed out. And you'll kind of notice that your characters feel more confident, which can also relate to you as a person being more confident. Question number 2 comes from Kimberly, and her question is, I feel like I'm in kind of a rut right now. Any tips for varying up my improv and making it feel fresh again? I talked about this pretty recently in episode 116 of MUT Tips, entitled What Are Your Go-Tos in Improv? And I think that's a good place to start. What are your go-tos? Because ultimately, if we are just stuck doing the same characters, the same approaches to improv, the same style of improv, then we will feel in a rut because we're just doing the same thing over and over. It just kind of becomes a routine. And there's times when we need to break through the routine and make it feel fresh again. Quick ways to spice it up are what format do you default to? Are you doing the Herald a lot? Maybe you should try a short form improv class, and vice versa. If you're doing a short form improv class, maybe consider taking a long form class, like a long form narrative class or some other style of improv that is more elongated and doesn't rely so much on predetermined rules for games. I also notice that people who feel like they're in a rut sometimes are people who follow the rules too much, and they're not focusing on the fun, the magic that they had when they first started doing improv, where they were breaking rules, but they were having fun. So a game that I like to play with my class and my cast members is a game that's called Scene Destroyer, where you just have people go on stage and just tell them, do a scene, but break every single rule in the book, okay? Don't worry about asking questions or doing stranger scenes or talking over each other, And this isn't what we're gonna do on stage when we do performances, right? Because, it's kind of weird to say, hey, break all the rules in the improv book when you are in front of an audience, but just taking that moment to just allow people to do that on stage. It's kind of liberating, it takes the weight off each other's shoulders, and now we're just kind of having fun breaking all the rules. And one more way to spice it up is I notice people sometimes default to grounded real characters. And I say ground the absurd. Do some scenes sometimes where you are playing not real human characters. Play objects in scenes, or maybe play animals if you don't do that very often. There's a lot of different types of characters that we never do because we're so focused on doing that, real, true improv because, right, there's truth in comedy. And yes, there is, but I think sometimes we can be a little bit more absurd on stage and we can also ground it. So take a premise that is real, grounded, like a divorce, child custody, marriage, but have it acted out by, squirrels, or have it acted out by coffee mugs, Inject some absurd, type of character into the scene, but grounded in reality. And it kind of just I don't know, there's more physicality that you can play with that you normally don't play with. There's a lot more opportunities for comedy if we kind of break through the barrier that is reality. Next question from Anonymous is, what do you feel about sound effects in improv? This is a great question because one of the downsides of doing improv is the inability to do sound effects sometimes without it feeling kind of odd, like making sounds with our mouths as we're doing a scene. It can sometimes take people out of the reality a bit. Not always. I do recommend sound effects generally come from like someone who's on like, tech, lights and sound. Maybe they have a soundboard, or a keyboardist maybe has access to sounds, or just playing the piano can kind of like, create the sensation that sounds are happening in the environment. But I'm not against doing sound effects yourself, Sometimes I'll say, oh, somebody who's off stage, maybe that person provides the sound effects. But doing them on stage, I'm not also against. I just say don't do it in excess. So for example, if there's a gun battle between two people, sometimes it is kind of better to just do like a quick like, because it's hard to just go like this. It doesn't have the impact because a gunshot is loud as So like if we don't, accompany it with some type of a vocal sound effect, then it doesn't feel as impactful. If it feels right, go for it. A good way to practice just sound effects in general and see how they can affect scenes is just have two people on stage, do a scene, and one person off to the side, either in a microphone or just audibly in the room, provides all the sound effects. After the scene, maybe discuss what were the sound effects that made the comedy more impactful, or just help define an action stronger, You might kind of like learn a few sound effects or types of actions that could really benefit from having sound effects either by someone off stage or just quickly and subtly with your own mouth on stage. Final question comes from Christina, and her question is pop culture references in improv, frowned upon or welcomed? Any real life experience that you can bring to the stage is beneficial in improv. Knowledge is power, especially pop culture knowledge. A quick aside, I do see a lot of scenes sometimes, based around, something complicated, like brain surgery, right? Two people are brain surgeons, they're doing brain surgery, and they play characters who have no idea what they're doing. It's my first day, I don't know how to do this, is this right? And I've seen so many scenes like that, and I feel like we're not able to discover the fun potential of just two people who know what they're doing, they're experts, and they're not questioning it. They're not being ignorant. I always say like, hey, maybe read an article about brain surgery and then you have a little nugget of knowledge that you can bring to the stage when you do that activity. With pop culture, there's so much out there, right? There's a lot of things that you can consume. And people out there have been just in their homes like for over a year, and they have that knowledge too. They've been watching a lot of stuff on streaming services or just on the internet, music, books, TV shows, video games. So much is out there. So I do think it is good to be in the zeitgeist and to actually become involved a bit with pop culture. Pop culture knowledge is a tool. It's not something we want to use in excess. Excess can kill scenes. You don't want your improv to turn into like late season episodes of Family Guy. Like, remember the time I got an NFT at Pete Davidson's bar mitzvah? Okay, so that's what the show has kind of become. We're just referencing stuff in, the world of media, and we forget about, the relationships, good storylines and scenes. But still having that knowledge and being able to pull it out of your pocket when needed is helpful. So like something I like to do sometimes is like, every day I like to go to like watchmojo.com or What Culture or other like top 10 lists and just like watch one of those videos to get like a little nugget of knowledge about something going on in the world. Maybe the world of Marvel. I'm not a big Marvel guy. I like maybe Into the Spider-Verse, but other than that, I don't really care about a lot of the Marvel universe. But I'll still like try to like have that knowledge so that when I do get a suggestion, like in a short form improv comedy show, you get pop culture references from the audience all the time. So just having just a little bit of knowledge that I can pull out of my pocket is helpful. Like I had to sing an Adele song recently. I don't listen to Adele a lot, but I do know a few of her songs, so I can sing enough or like impersonate her voice enough to satisfy the audience's expectations. And that concludes this episode of MUT Tips, everybody. Thank you so much for checking it out. I really appreciate it. Again, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We are 2 subscribers away at time of recording from 2K subscribers. That's pretty awesome for a little improv theater in Fremont, California. Heck yeah, subscribe, baby. And I'll see you next time for another episode of MUT Tips. Happy holidays, and bye!